Way. Bonjour, good afternoon. Welcome, friends, to our Circle of All Nations live video event on our Facebook page to honor and acknowledge and celebrate the life of Grandfather William Commanda. And I'm commencing with a smudge, burning of the sacred sage, such as he always did when he opened his meetings, inviting us all to draw our minds and our hearts and our emotions and our thoughts together, embraced by the spiritual energy that each of us holds as we gather together and bring our minds to the subjects that we're wanting to explore. And all of us, irrespective of our backgrounds, our cultures, our religion, know that there's something of the other world that grows within us. And I invite you all to bring your minds to thought, to prayer, to meditation for a few moments as we commence this event. And as you bring your energies to it, we all join to remember Grandfather's prayer for Gino Daganuk, the energy of interconnection. Watch. And as I start this live stream presentation, I'm actually reminded that Grandfather Commanda was always super interested in the entire world, and of course his name, Ojibwanong, Morning Star, showed how deeply connected his people were with the cosmic world. And he's brought to us an acknowledgement, a realization that we are all part of a huge cosmic reality, and our lives are deeply interconnected at multiple levels across the globe. And today it's Remembrance Day, it's the 11th November, and we remember that Grandfather Commanda was born in 1913 on the eve of the First World War. And for many of us, he was a beacon of light, really, shining a pathway into a future of hope in what was really an increasingly dark global landscape. And in drawing our minds to prayer right now, I'm wanting to mention something that's happening really in the Philippines. Our first guest was supposed to be Big Bear, Ron Goddard Fournier, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him a little later in our program. But in fact, he contacted me this morning to say that he couldn't join us because they have to keep the Facebook channels open for communications with his wife's family, and they are actually here.
Nalalagay na naman sa panganib dahil sa bagyong Ulysses.
Humingi kami ng tulong. Tulungan niyo kami kasi marami po akong apo.
Kaya marami na ang lumikas. Sa Camarines Norte, isa ang patay habang 3 ang nawawala. Signal number 3 nakataas sa Metro Manila at marami pang probinsya sa Luzon. Pangulo
So the images show us the devastation in the province of Catanayduanes, the home place of Big Bear's wife. Big Bear's wife of many years. And of course, this is like part of the reality of so many of us who are in engage with people all over the globe. And this was very much the kind of realization that Grandfather Commanda tried to bring to us, that we're all connected, that we're all interrelated. And so I am now going to try and find my PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to say really my prayer for today was a big thank you for the incredible leadership and inspiration of Grandfather William Commanda. You drew together a huge diversity of people and made us believe in Gina Way Daganuk, that everything is related. Ojigwanong, Morning Star, was born on the 11th of November 1913, on the eve of the First World War, and for many became a beacon of light in an ever-darkening world. Perhaps today, more than ever, we need his vision to navigate us through the unprecedented challenges and perils of our time. May we all be good enough for this challenge. And now it would be really great if somebody who might be watching out there could in fact confirm via a note that you can actually hear me. Is that possible? Can you hear me? Oh, excellent, Jamie. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you fancy chatting at any point later in the program, we'll be glad to have you on. Thank you so very much for confirming that. Okay, so now I shall be moving on to my formal PowerPoint presentation for today. Of course, I should have started off the entire thing with a great deal more confidence, because what I've discovered is that the Facebook videos can't be easily edited, and you can't remove some of my oohs and ahs. And yet it's always such a stressful thing doing something like this. But I guess Grandfather demands it of us. So, in May, I had actually been wanting to share a background, a presentation on William Commanda. So, while I recognize that his friends know him very well, we also realize that many new people have come to the Grandfather Commanda work and energy, and really need to catch up on key elements of his huge life and outreach. But in May, the Facebook technology did not work so well, so I wasn't able to present the PowerPoint presentation then. And partly that's what I'm going to do today. In fact, it was rather a terrifying experience in May, because then I had to just pretty well share from my heart what I thought we needed to understand about him. So for some of you, this may be stuff you're familiar with, but each time I consider this, it makes me think deeper thoughts about the immense passion for life, passion for work, passion for people, passion for Mother Earth that he conveyed with every breath and every step he took. So the Circle of All Nations, the Culture of Peace, is the legacy, the work of Indigenous Elder Dr. William Commanda, Officer of the Order of Canada, and his Circle of All Nations is a global eco-community unified by our fundamental and unshakable conviction that, as children of Mother Earth, we all belong together with nature and each other, irrespective of individual color, creed, or culture. November 11th, 2020, and here we are grateful that the Facebook technology enables us to have an online gathering where anybody across the world can join us and learn about this remarkable indigenous elder as well as about his very, very special friends and colleagues and contribute to the discussion. And it's rather amazing to us to be able to access this and um, under such challenging times. It is, of course, November 11th, and it's Remembrance Day. And I always start this day with a memory of a veteran who I used to visit in Stettler, Alberta. And this memory comes from before the days that I met and worked with Grandfather Commanda. Now, I used to visit this old wounded vet, and when it was time for me to leave, he'd ask me to wait while he recited this Robert Service poem, The Ballad of the Iceworm. And it would go, da 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 da. And he would recite this, and if he missed the words and had to go back to the beginning, he would like frantically ask me to wait till he could start the recitation again. And I realized that the poem soothed him into an oblivion so that he could cope with the incredible distress of his life. And so, with that, my years of working with veterans um, brings for me a special moment of angst as we acknowledge a world, a reality so strewn with violence. Um, and this is also a part of my studies, this work of ours. And I've been fortunate to engage with many young students over the last couple of years, and particularly this year. And one of the things that I'm very, very conscious of is most of these young people have grown up after 9/11, when the world experienced a devastating loss of innocence. And these young people, I believe, have grown up with a different kind of fear that older folk like me and older folk like grandfather, as hard and tragic as some of our experiences might have been, they're not quite experienced. And of course, over this last year, we've realized that we're all now facing a new terrifying reality, and that's the pandemic and all it has brought to transform our lives so irrevocably. And during my last presentation, I shared a little bit about Isaias and what that name of the tropical storm meant in terms of what Grandfather Commanda anticipated uh, was going to be the environmental challenges that were going to impact us in the future. And you'll recall that we had that storm on the 3rd of August, the day of his passing. We had a storm when we talked about the Donald Marshall birthday, September 13th. Um, and in and today, of course, we're acknowledging what's happening in the other part of the world, and we realize all of us are being impacted by actions and choices um, um, from locations all over the world. And of course, amongst them were things like the tree cutting, the endless exploitation of the resources of the natural world, the elimination of so many species either directly by shooting or killing them off, or indirectly through habitat loss. And grandfather worked very hard to alert us to these realities. And I think he left us in some despair because he realized that we weren't quite understanding the dire implications of some of our choices. Um, and Yet he always worked hard, believing endlessly in an energy of hope. And this then becomes part of our prayer for the young people of today and the future generations. So we developed this an acronym Can Teach quite a few years ago, and we talked about the Circle of All Nations being engaged in training, education, advocacy, communications, and healing. And in November 2014, we launched our new virtual school, sharing ideas, knowledge, and wisdom to contribute to personal and community development and to honor the years of hard work, outreach, and passion of William Commanda and the many people who helped animate his work. Uh, this is an image of really actually a very pleased looking grandfather, William Commanda, and this is when he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from what was then known as the National Aboriginal Achievement Awards. It came in 2010, really at the late end of his life, and I think it's a special photograph for me because it shows that I think he was happy that his own indigenous peoples finally understood and acknowledged something deep about the wisdom and the knowledge and the love and their heritage that he carried forward on their behalf, a heritage that many of us, people who look like me, um, raced forward to embrace when we had the opportunity to. And he said, we must come together with one heart, one mind, one love, and one determination to create a circle of all nations, a culture of peace. He was a tireless worker and teacher, and he welcomed every opportunity to exchange ideas. He also believed, as first person of the land, he had a grave and particular responsibility to share the timeless values of his ancestors with us. And he, of course, spoke in Algonquin first, really uh, to the great creative energy of the world, to his great creative spirit. And then he translated himself into English and French. I really welcome any of our French colleagues to add to our discussion en français. Je manquais l'habilité de parler beaucoup le français, donc je m'excuse. Also, sometimes I wish I had spent all my time learning William's language rather than chasing so many windmills during our 20 years, during the last 20 years of his life. And, uh, and that is because I realized something profound about his language. He said, Romola, my language is so vast. The vastness implying an earth-based, a grounded in the earth language that contains so many huge thoughts, and uh, and he felt very badly that he couldn't convey all those thoughts to people, even though he spoke to them in their languages, because his ideas were too immense, and he was worried about our capacity as we lost the immensity of his languages and the conceptual ideas, how we would be able to cope with the complexities that his ancestors did. And so in his language, I've learned a few words, and really the first two words that he taught me, one was Sagiwewen, it was love, and the other was Poninjigewen, forgiveness. And it was with those two powerful words and concepts that he navigated his way through a very turbulent century. his background. His people were the Mamiwinini, the nomads. He often talked about 84 Algonquin nations who spanned North America, and through their language, he was able to trace their their presence across the continent from east to west. And he went to the Chumash people in Baja, close to Baja, California. No, actually, it was in California. And he was able to speak to them in their language, and that affirmed the reach of the Algonquian language of the people of the Ottawa River watershed, and it is believed that theirs was the generic tongue. And and when I mentioned Baja California was fast forwarding, I discovered that the indigenous languages of the people of Baja California across the border also were Algonquian in roots. So when he described himself like this, I am in the water and in the wind. I am as the bird flies and as the river flows. I am North America. He was talking about his ancestral connection with this continent. He, he discussed it in that way in the documentary Ojigwanong that Lucy Wimet created on some of his work. There, primarily, his outreach to people in prisons. The birch bark canoe is the symbol of this movement through the waters and through the land. This heritage was encompassed in the word mami wini ni, the nomad. And this is how he described himself. He didn't so much call himself Algonquin. He did not so much call himself Anishinaabe, though he was those things as well. He described himself as Mami Winini, the person who moves every day. That's what his people did. They were always people in motion. And this heritage signified several things to Elder Commanda: a sacred connection with the land and a special responsibility as caretaker of Mother Earth. He was regularly invited to comment on many things: racism, peace, justice, children, education, art, but he always commenced with the prayer for Mother Earth to emphasize that without her, the primary provider and nurturer of life for all, there would be nothing. A huge part of his journey during the latter portion of his life was triggered by a spiritual awakening in 1961, an awakening following a near terminal illness, an encounter with cancer, and it was at this stage that he moved from a self-destructive despair to love and respect. And he began to work to bring people together, people of diverse racial and cultural backgrounds. And so this was really his journey of self-empowerment, healing, and vision. In 1971, he became keeper of 3 sacred record-keeping wampum belts of spiritual and historical importance, and in 1987 began to share the messages of the belts in public discussions on Aboriginal issues. These are ancient record-keeping and storytelling artifacts of spiritual and historical importance, crafted by the indigenous peoples of the American Northeast. And William's great-great-grandfather, Pakanawati, was the original known carrier of the Algonquin wampum belts. Grandfather talked about these as living belts, living heritage, and in part because they were not housed in museums. But he animated those belts over the last several decades of his life, and they imbued his work with a particular quality. And in essence, the 7 Fire Prophecy belt, which is the most ancient of the belts, talked about the choices that the new people of the world would have to make in these turbulent times. And for many of us, William Commanda was the carrier of the seven fire prophecy, wampum belt, during the time of the unfolding of the seventh fire, the prophecy of the seventh fire. And it is a prophecy, it's an oral prophecy carried by many other people. And when he went to South Africa, he shared the seven fire teachings with the Zulu shaman Credo Mutwa. And he said, you don't have to tell me all about it because we have that prophecy in our teachings as well. It was actually in 1987 that the voice of the indigenous peoples became heard loudly around the globe. Grandfather Commanda, of course, brought the prophecy belts out at the time of the Canadian government's constitutional hearings with the indigenous people, a commitment that came out of reclaiming the Constitution from Britain and creating the Charter of Rights, the Canadian Charter. And during the initial round table with where Grandfather Commanda was present, he raised the issue of the environment, and he commented on the pollution of the waters, the pollution of the land, the death of the animals, the destruction that he saw happening uh, all over on the face of Mother Earth. And he said to the political leadership, and we depend on you to remedy this before the end of time. It's such a strange phrase. And of course, now as we look to the plight of the earth, things like climate change are now common words. Whereas in academia, there was no such word as environment in the 1970s. Now we talk about environmental challenges. Many have described this as the age of the Anthropocene, where it's human action on the earth that has contributed to so much of the destruction, so much of the change that we're facing. We right now are dealing with a natural phenomena, really, the virus of the COVID, and it is spreading because there's very little in a biodiverse ecosystem surrounding the world to hold it in balance. And I think these are the kinds of things that Grandfather Commanda and other indigenous elders try to awaken us to with respect to the sacred balance of earth. And the laws of nature, of course. In 1700s, he talked about the sharing, the welcome of the three-figure wampum belt, where the indigenous peoples, his people really, of the eastern seaboard, welcomed the newcomers and agreed to share their land and their grand natural resources in equitable proportions with them. In those days, they were the French and the English, and I do not think the indigenous peoples anticipated that they would be coming in such numbers, or that they wouldn't continue with the kind of respect for balance in terms of sharing of values, because remember, many of those people came across with scurvy, with disease that the indigenous peoples helped cure them of, helped heal them, showed them how to manage in this very challenging land. And because his ancestors had affirmed this welcome, then Grandfather continued throughout his life to reaffirm a welcome to the newcomers. By this stage, of course, they were the old settlers and then the newer immigrants like me. And though he saw the increasingly destructive impact many of us were having on his homeland, still he affirmed friendship. Then there was the Jay Treaty border crossing belt. which really was part of a political process where Canada and the United States then um, created boundaries, created divisions that separated his Turtle Island, his motherland. But he really actually always affirmed a notion of belonging to the entire continent of North America, and in fact, the entire continent of the Americas, because at another point he said he didn't create the Panama Canal. And as you know, Grandfather Commanda, as some of you will know, Grandfather Commanda liked to carry, liked to use a condor feather, which talked, on the one hand, of the prophecy that talked about the reunification of the people of the South and the people of the North, but it also affirmed his relationship with indigenous peoples in the South America. And in fact, this shows some of the South Americans, this painting shows some of the South American people who joined him at our Circle of All Nations gathering in Manawaki, Kiriganzibi. Many things contributed profoundly to his passion and commitment to his creation of the Circle of All Nations global eco-community. His canoe and craft mating grounding, his fight for indigenous rights, including as Supreme Chief of North American Indian Nations government, his spiritual awakening after his near-death encounter with cancer, and his responsibilities as carrier of the sacred wampum heritage, a fervent passion for Mother Earth, his love for people, and his deep conviction about the critical importance of diversity, self-empowerment, personal power, collaboration, respect, and responsibility. Grandfather Commanda in his robe of Africa, the global citizen who had visited Japan, he called this his kimono, and he may look like he was resting, but really, Grandfather Commanda never snoozed too long. Here he is signing our Learning from a Kindergarten Dropout book, which promotes a mini history and articulation of his philosophy and is our blueprint for the Circle of All Nation vision and version of the good life. And over the last several months, a few of us have been actually studying that book to 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 determine its relevance really for thinking today. It was written in 2005 after Grandfather Commanda delivered 2 weeks of teachings at the Cumic Lodge. And he took that Cumic Lodge teaching experience on with great enthusiasm. Immediately wanted PowerPoint presentations prepared. He took his wampum belt heritage, he took his pipe, he took an eclectic bundle of teaching tools to share with the people. And this book was a journal capturing the activities and the priorities for each of our 13 days. I like to say it was immediately after that that the University of Ottawa presented Grandfather Commanda with his first honorary degree. He received a second one from Quebec Outaouais later. And what we also say is that at this point then, the National Capital Region within the heart of the country is finally beginning to accept and beginning to understand the wisdom and knowledge and thinking of the indigenous as articulated via the work of Grandfather William Commanda. So yeah, so we've had a bunch of younger folk exploring the text over the past few months, and it is in fact a journal for reflection and kind of deepening. And I think from their contributions, it seems like the book is ever relevant and perhaps even more relevant as time goes by. It's really rather timeless in its text. And we shall be doing an analysis of our course And perhaps even later in this program, we'll have some of our students share their thoughts and their experiences with that book. And yeah, so grandfather was a lifelong learner, and he received his honorary degrees. He actually delivered the convocation speech at his graduation. Oh, and he was also appointed officer of the Order of Canada. And as our friend Donald Marshall Jr. said, legend never dies. Grounded in his indigenous roots, he was also a global citizen, and consistent with his prayer, Jinawe Daganu, we are all connected, he affirmed relationship with Mother Earth as the primary responsibility. Already in the 40s, he and other indigenous peoples were alert to environmental changes inconsistent with cosmic rhythm. Relationships with Mother Earth was the pathway to spiritual growth and health. And so the prayer for Mother Earth was always his first prayer. And he liked to share this prophecy with people at all his meetings only after. Only after the last tree has been cut down, only after the last river has been poisoned, only after the last fish has been caught, only then will you find that money cannot be eaten. A challenging message for today. William Commanda received a Wolf Award in 1997 in acknowledgement of his dedication to advancing racial harmony and peace building. His wolf was named Corona Borealis after the North Star. He also served as special advisor to the Wolf Project over many years. The second and interlinked prayer is for all her children, that is, all the children of Mother Earth, and that includes all of us. So the Wolf Project is about dignifying each other as one race, the human race. It's interesting that President Mandela was also presented with a Wolf Project award. His wolf was called Corona Australis. And when COVID first hit us, I was suddenly struck by the name Corona, and I thought about its implications and its global reach, the reach of this virus. And I wrote a little piece about that you could find in our circle archives. And yeah, and it's kind of actually distressing to think how sadly accurate the prophecies were. President Mandela was a recipient. Oh yes, here we go. President Mandela was a recipient of the Corona Australis Wolf Project Award. Here, Elder Commanda is welcoming him to the Human Rights Tribute in Ottawa. Last year, the city of Ottawa declared a day of reconciliation, the name of Elder Commanda and President Mandela. I think that was actually 2014 that such a date was declared. Of course, reconciliation was a word that William Commanda introduced in 1967 when he hosted his first gathering in Eganville, his first international gathering in Eganville. While Canada was celebrating its 100th birthday, William Commanda was actually affirming indigenous presence on the continent, and at the same time generating the energy of reconciliation and the energy of healing, because he also realized something else already by then, that people were dealing with a lot of angst nowadays, in those days. There was a lot of mental health strife and struggle that he could see amongst the newcomers on his land. And of course, now mental health issues have become the new normal. And it's very distressing, really, to realize how far we've strayed from a life of health, a life of balance, a life of well being, which ought to really be the gift of life on a healthy earth. We've talked a lot about our friend Donald Marshall Jr. over the last little while, and we've seen since our two presentations in September and October further advance in terms of some of the um, challenges within the fishing industry. And the most recent being the agreement that the Mi'kmaq people have made with respect to some of their fishing opportunities. Donald Marshall Jr. was our Canadian Mandela equivalent. He spent 11 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He won two national court cases. One, the Donald Marshall Justice Inquiry, that inspired the wrongfully convicted program, and the other, the eel case, the indigenous rights to their grand natural resources. He operated the Donald Marshall Senior Youth Camp, working to reclaim youth at risk on the land with traditional teachings, skill building, compassion, and support. He also received a Wolf Project Award for his efforts to commitment to racial harmony and reconciliation. And if you go back and find some of our Facebook Live videos of the last couple of months, you'll find much more about the Donald Marshall story and passion. Yeah. So ultimately, then, the Circle of All Nations work is about diversity and unity. It's a vision for harmony based on the values of forgiveness and love. It's focused on honoring and developing one's individual strengths and gifts and contributing to the strengths of the community. Gina, we're dug it. We're all interconnected. This was William Commanda's constant prayer and reminder. The Circle of Four Nations, then, is the vision and work of William Commanda over the past 40 years. It is not an organization or a network with any formal infrastructure, rather, is a global eco community. And of course, the biggest teacher of all is Mother Earth herself. And we say the door is still round and open. Grandfather Commanda would say, go now and explore these ideas beside some tree or rock, a river or waterfall. We have explored conceptualization of vision, which sees some things manifested in action. Now is the time for reflection and refinement of the vision and the work, leading then to the articulation as wisdom and pointing to the next spiral in the medicine wheel of learning. And that is really pretty well the way we organize and animate our Circle of All Nations work. So that then is the basic backgrounder of on Grandfather William Commanda. Now I am going to see if I can reach one of our new students. Oh, I see one of our new students is also joining us here, and this is Emmeline Saylor. My prof canceled the class this afternoon, so I'm going to use the time to apply for and finish up some work, and happy birthday to grandfather and have great celebration. Now let me find Maduran. Nowhere. Well, let's see. Oh, there you are. Let me show you. To our friends. Maduran.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Doing good.
Okay.
I just have the live feed going. Oh my god. Okay, perfect. I think I can hear you properly now.
Okay.
Hi.
So let me show you a little better, and then you can tell us about how you've become acquainted with Grandfather Commanda and how you've created this amazing birthday card.
Aw, thank you. So I'm new to learning about William Commanda. So I'm just like doing some research, reading his journals, and like getting to know him from that. Now I'm just doing like artwork, like trying to visualize like aspects of the journal and kind of creating artwork. So if I could show you. Um, okay. Tasty. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay. So this is my little artwork. So there's a lot of things going on. So I'll just start from the border and then work my way in. So the border here is it's birch bark. I wanted to include that because he built his canoes out of birch bark. Um, so I kind of felt like it was really important, and it's kind of like staple, I would say, um, from reading journals and stuff like that. And then going on to the water, I kind of want to make it more fun and show the kind of like the abstract way of showing water in the water. So I kind of wanted it to show the turtles, which is really special to him, and the eels, which is also important to the community as well. Um, and they're kind of glowing, which is kind of like make it really special in a way, something like miraculous of nature. Um, yeah, that was kind of fun to play around with the glowing turtles and eels. So I have a little sketch or a little I don't know, silhouette of a man in a canoe fishing, and you have William Commanda right here in the moon, kind of looking at the fisherman, and I kind of call it as like William Commanda is always looking um, to you when you're fishing, or just kind of like be aware of how much you fish, or kind of like his guide, his messages, and I don't know, like his lessons are always there, even though he's not here. So I kind of wanted to include that in the graphic, and then we have the morning star right here, just shining bright, and William Commando's like translated name. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's Morning Star. Um, and then we have your picture right here, Romola, over here. It's the sleeping giant. So I kind of made it black and white, and then kind of highlighted the silhouette, just to show the peaks and the different dips of the giant mountain. And then yeah, I don't know if I'm missing anything. There's so much going on, and I think it's just a great cohesive work.
Well, I only saw this what a half an hour ago, or well at
Yeah,
12:30.
yeah.
So I'm super impressed with how you've drawn together, such a dense image, such a dense representation of so many of the key themes in
Mm-hmm,
grandfather's work. And I think I barely known you 2 months, really. Hey.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, so I'm really glad to see your creativity spark up so well with our work, because of
mm-hmm,
course with our research, our postdoctoral research on grandfather William Commanda,
mm-hmm,
we're exactly wanting to see how relevant he might be, his voice might
mm-hmm,
be, to new students, to the academy, to younger thinkers. And and as you point out, the balance in terms of the resources here, that little fishing image reminds me about actually his uncle, Big John Kaye, who used to actually make fishing nets with cedar, and uh, and the nets would allow smaller fish to escape through the holes. And of course, depending on the kinds of fish, the sizes of the holes were of different, of different sizes. And that is how indigenous peoples of grandfathers' elk would manage to use the resources provided by the natural world, but also ensure that they were not exploiting them and that future generations would be here to feed people. But when the Indian agents and when the realities of the lives of indigenous peoples changed, then Uncle Big John Kaye's fishing net was confiscated. And during the 30s, which were like really a similar period to what we're approaching, the 30s were a time of depression where people were pretty well starving. So this is the irony of the reality in the country of Canada. Newcomers were given really welfare to help them survive the 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 the, the poverty, the starvation that they were facing. Indigenous peoples, however, were not allowed to feed themselves in the ways they traditionally fed themselves by the fishing. And so great uncle John's net was confiscated. When grandfather Commanda himself was 8 years old, Grandpa Alonzo shot a moose to feed the family for the entire winter, and the game warden came and confiscated the moose. And so the family basically like starved, or close to well nigh starved. You know, they were hungry. They were, and the irony was that the people in the town of Maniwaki were able to get welfare. But when the Indian people went to the Indian agents to ask for their share of the resources, they were treated with huge disdain and insults. And I want to say at this point, yesterday, the day before, were very sad days for me because Grandfather Commander's great nephew, John Gallinger, died. Young man, and the grandson of William's older sister. But when his grandfather went to ask for some help during that drastic period, the game warden, who was then Mr. Gautier, was so rude that the grandfather said, "I never go and ask, even though it's my natural resource. I still won't go and ask these people for anything." So that's the kind of painful heritage that William Commanda had to come to terms with and move beyond in terms of his embracing people. So I really like what you drew to my attention with that fishing story, and I've of course expanded it a whole lot. And I also like the hat you have on that fisherman over there. Now, Grandfather Commanda generally wore, well, he loved his baseball cap. And that is generally what he wore most of the time. He also liked his cowboy hat, but once he went to the archival site at, is it, where the casino is in Gatineau Howe. What do you call that place? Exactly there. And they were doing archival research, and they gave him a cap like that, and it kind of suited him for quite a while. But of course, what I am saying is that in the last 10, 15 years, the evidence of the presence of the ancient people of the Ottawa River watershed came alive to Government of Canada, the National Capital Commission, and others. And what, of course, that affirmed was that the indigenous peoples for at least 8,000 years had traveled, knew their continent so well, and brought back artifacts from Lake Superior, where the sleeping giant rests, from parts of Vermont, parts of the states. And the presence of these artifacts confirmed how well traveled, confirmed the Mami Winini nomadic heritage. That was part of his background. So I like that image there. And of course, the sleeping giant, you wouldn't know this, and perhaps many of our listeners won't. Of course, it's a huge iconic symbol in Canada, but it is also the kind of image of grandfather when he died and was resting in his canoe for 3 days at his lodge, and that's sort of like the image that reminds me of. So I say the sleeping giant is waking up again, and you've created a beautiful birthday card, and so thank you very much for your efforts.
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything else before I?
I would like to say happy birthday, William Commanda. Yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the program. I'll be staying tuned on live, so yeah, excited to hear what everyone else is talking about and remembering him. So thank you for having me.
Okay, well, great. And if you have any thoughts or comments, don't forget to add to the chat line and animate the discussion. Take it as your
Okay.
responsibility as one of the students working on the William Commanda archives. Okay,
All
thank you very
right.
much. Take good care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, that was indeed a special surprise a little while ago, and I'm glad I was able to include it there in our PowerPoint presentation. Thank you again, Maduran. Maduran Muguratasan. Okay, so I said earlier that my first official guest was going to be Big Bear Kichimakwa Ron Goddard Fournier, and I created this little image to share some of the threads of his connection with us, with our Circle of Four Nations, and with Grandfather William Commanda. I won't go into it in too much detail now because perhaps we'll have a chance to talk to Ron at some other stage. But here you see in this image, um, he's here with Dan Bernard, and both of them served as firekeepers during the time when people were protesting the destruction of the beaver pond and trees and landscape at the South March Highlands. And Ron and Dan spent very many cold days at the fires there, where indigenous but a lot of local community, non-indigenous folk joined in this challenge against development at a very, very special ancient landscape. And on that landscape, um, uh, Ron identified a medicine wheel formation of rocks, and we had actually colleagues from Massachusetts research and affirm the importance of this area. And of course, this area was so very important because after the Ice Age, 11 to 9,000 years ago, we had the Champlain Sea covering this area of the country around Ottawa. And as the sea retreated into the Atlantic Ocean, land presented, peaks of land presented, and this is one of the areas where these islands of land presented. And the indigenous marine navigators from the eastern seaboard coast would have traveled up the Connecticut River waterways and portage routes to this very special place. And that too then affirms how important this area was to ancient people. Ron was involved in the animation of Victoria Island from the mid 90s, created a flag that I'll allow him to share the symbolism about. There's an article here from Tribal Council Chief Albert Tonesco affirming support for the Shawty Victoria Island Indigenous Center vision. This is a book written by Jean-Guy Paquin, which talks about the people of the Quebec side of the Ottawa River, the Petit Nation, the West Caledonians, and much of the story was shared too by the relatives of the aunts of Ron Goddard. But one of the things he said at that launch of the of Jean-Guy's second book was being denied access to my indigenous heritage is genocide inflicted on me by Canada. And that is because he was not able to claim his Algonquin ancestry, his Mohawk ancestry, and integrate it with his French and other identities. He was separated from the indigenous thread, which actually runs through his blood and his thinking. So here, with an intertribal group of elders, also worked to uh, create sweetgrass braids for elders, and he used to bring us big bundles of sweetgrass braids during the June 21st pipe ceremonies that Grandfather Commanda hosted on Victoria Island. The sweetgrass you see actually in that little pot comes to us via the seeds of Big Bear, but comes to us via our friend Winnie from Denmark. She took some of those seeds home and has nurtured the sweetgrass there. You would have heard about Winnie. She went and retrieved memories and photographs of Grandfather Commander's canoe at the Roskilde Museum. Perhaps you are online, Winnie, and will join us and chat a little later. But anyway, the image is really an image of geography, really, and connections across time and space. And we'll explore that in greater depth with Kichimani, Big Bear, Kichimakwa, Big Bear, Ron Goddard Fournier at another stage. His uncle Joseph was a great canoe builder as well. But now I'm going to fast forward uh, to Sarifa Mola Nernez, and let me try to call her at the same time, and then I shall tell you a little bit more about her. While we see whether she answers the call, may I say that in 2000, Grandfather Commander hosted a gathering at Nepean Point, and we brought in 5 youth from South Africa to engage in this gathering, and one of them was Sarifa, and I think we've got her. And this article over here, Circle of All Nations article, was written by Sarifa in 20, 2000, in 2000, and here she is in the
Yeah.
picture with grandfather Commanda. So, Sarifa, welcome.
Thank you.
And this is our South African youth who's a lot older now and is actually not in South Africa. I'm reaching you in Norway,
Yes.
but it was because by chance I noted Dina Salya's post about you becoming a board member with Umtapo Peace Education Center that I
Mhm.
reconnected with you after all these years. And it is
Yeah.
so wonderful to see you.
Same here. Same here.
Okay, now tell us about yourself and tell us about the global reach of Grandfather William Commander's work across time and space.
Well,
Wow.
yeah. Well, I'm a mother. I have two little girls, 7 and yeah, soon to be 5.
Okay.
I'm a wife, and I am a businesswoman.
Oh,
I run Ubuntu Life Coaching, and I also work and consult for local government in a municipality called Bjornafjorden, where I work with refugees, and it's the settling of refugees in the municipality. And we receive refugees from different countries: Congo, South Sudan, Syria, Afghanistan, yeah, several different countries.
okay. Wow.
So yeah, it's a great time at the moment, even with COVID. So I'm quite busy, just trying to be there for people and support and, spread love and Ubuntu. That's what it's about. And I think for me, that's one of the reasons why I so connected with the work that you and Elder William Commanda and the community there have been doing. It's, I always tell people what drives me is, as a mother, are my children and developing a better future and society for them that would not focus on the way they look, but what they have here and in their hearts, and that so resonates with the work that you do, or with First Nations people who do everything to ensure that the future generations have a better livelihood and have a better humanity. And I mean, I was thinking about Elder William Commanda, and we were sitting in your lounge, and just reflecting on the humility that he had. He was this person, a wise man, yet so approachable, and big heart and love for youth and people. And I think for me, that's what's been appealing, and that's what I carry with me. And it so gels with my African upbringing. So this is something that I'm bringing to Norway. And I think we need to share within, the individualistic societies. And unfortunately, we're living in a time where there's so much of narcissism also, and so this is the time during Corona that we use this as an opportunity. It's not a bad thing. It's an opportunity for us to spread the word of, Ubuntu, of humility, of indigenous knowledge, healing, and love.
Okay, well, wonderful. We've talked about grandfather's word, Gina Daganuk, which talks about us all being connected. Now, you use Ubuntu. Can you share for our people what Ubuntu means to you?
Yes. Well, as you know, Ubuntu very simply is, the African philosophy is, I am because of you, and you are because of us. And it's exactly that as human beings, we are all interconnected, and that we each have an important role to play. And I think one of the things with Ubuntu, there's this misconception that, in the collectivist society, the individual gets lost. But for me, I perceive it as a person, you have to be aware of who you are. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your gifts that you can share with the world in order to fit into this bigger, chain of life.
Wonderful. So you've taken your gifts far. Uh, I recall in that article that you wrote that something to the effect of under the embrace of the grandfather William Commanda, you five youth in May 2000 found ways to connect with each other there at the Novotel Hotel in downtown Ottawa, where you were all living together. And this being really one of the first moments when the diversity of the old South African races were now sharing, the kitchen table and the bedrooms, right?
Yeah,
And it enabled you guys to bridge differences.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for me, having grown up within Umtapo Center, running workshops on peace and anti-racism, I felt that I had dealt with these issues of race. And then we come to Ottawa, and I have to share a room with an Afrikaner woman, and it was like, it was in my face, and I had to address it there and then. And, you know, getting to meet this woman and seeing that here's another human being, and I think for me also that the whole, yeah, meaning or the whole agenda behind what apartheid was, shifted to an extent, in terms of here is a system that used myself and this woman, Renee, against each other because they wanted to exploit the resources of the country. But when we come together, we realize we're human beings who have, the best interest at heart. And so, to build from that and to begin that process of dialogue and healing, I think, was great in that sense. Yeah, so we needed to come out of South Africa to get to know each other and see each other as human beings.
Yeah, that is, yeah, such an incredible thread in the story, because I think it's because of that spirit really that Grandfather Commander was able to have such a diversity of people gather every year at his home from all over the world. We actually didn't know who these thousands of people were, and
Right.
we kept safe. And each year, the momentum towards greater and greater peace evolved, and now Canada is catching up with Indigenous, and even as they catch up with the rights and the presence of Indigenous peoples, they actually affirm a separation that is quite different from the spirit of Ubuntu and the spirit of Grandfather Commanda and his Gina Daganut. Because there's no question but that he's indigenous. There's no loss of his identity, yet there is the embrace of diversity. And it's that, I think, that, of course, I think we all need more and more of in this world, but that we need to find ways of showing and bringing forward. So, in that context, I realized, okay, you came and then you kind of disappeared. And I think it was at that stage you went to study in Dublin, was it? Dublin.
No, in Bradford,
In, yeah.
West York.
Okay, so one of my threads in doing these Facebook Live video events is linked with, oh, I'm a student. So it's linked with my postdoctoral studies on Grandfather William Commanda. So after he died, I'd written a book about him, you probably don't know. I called it Learning from a Kindergarten Dropout. And then I've gone to school to study him so that I can leave some record of his thinking and his knowledge. And that has evolved into this postdoctoral research. And here I'm looking at how technology can help transmit his story. So one part of my work is mapping his story in a cybercartographic atlas, such as was developed by my thesis supervisor and his team at the Geomatics and Cartographic Research Center at Carleton University. So my professor, Professor Fraser Taylor, defined this word cybercartography, digital mapping that allows for the sharing of stories in visual imagery, in audio, in text, in a variety of ways, such that we can ground a story on the land. But the other technology that I call cybernetics and is our use of Facebook and social media to reach people and project the story in a fast, speedy way. And here I'm drawing on the uh, steering, guiding framework of the word cybernetic, the French word
Yes,
cybernetic. And I'm saying grandfather is steering us along, he is guiding us along. So the
absolutely.
education thread is also important in our work. So I'd like you to tell me a little bit about your education and your
Yeah.
studies. Yeah.
Well, I started with, I did a bachelor in South Africa and I majored in psychology, sociology, and English. I wanted to do clinical psychology. And but this is what, 1994, and South Africa is to an extent not ready. We haven't quite transformed. And it was very difficult for, a black person to come into the field of psychology. However, I mean, we've come further now because my niece is actually studying clinical psychology, which I'm very proud of. Um, and then, yeah, I came to Canada with through Umtapa with the youth program. And, one of the things that I love about Umtapa is, the ethical aspect and being authentic and true to who they are. And I remember, Umtapa got funding, but they wanted us to compromise our work and how we work with people and how we engage. And Dina said, you know what? No, thank you. You can keep your money. And so me being the youngest one and the last one to come in, they sat me down and we had a talk about, we don't have much funding and you should consider taking your studies further. And at that time, I think we were working on the exchange program between youth in South Africa and youth in Northern Ireland. And, very absent-mindedly, I just sent out these applications and sent out applications for scholarships. And what happened is I got the scholarship first, and then I realized, oh my God, I need to find a university. And so that's a push. So I actually got my response whilst in Belfast that, hey, you got into the University of Bradford to do peace studies. And so within 2 weeks, I had to move from Belfast to South Africa to Durban, get my things, and then move to Bradford University. So I did my master's in peace studies and focused my dissertation on the role of women in peace building and focusing again. And this is another interesting story because I clashed with my then supervisor because we disagreed on the definition of peace. So she had worked in Angola and Mozambique and was the Southern African expert who had worked in sort of, civil war settings. And therefore, for her, peace was the absence of war. But for me, I was saying, peace is about human security. It's about food security. It's about the woman in KwaZulu-Natal who can feed her little baby without thinking about where the next meal is going to come from. So for me, that was what peace meant, that women can walk the streets without fear. That's the peace that we were talking about. And so we clashed, and at the end of it, she refused to supervise me. But I found somebody else who supervised me, and he told me, I don't know anything about women and peace building, but I know how to write a dissertation. So you will teach me, and I will teach you, and we'll work together. And I graduated without her, and yeah, had like 3 months to submit, and I did that. And then I ended up staying in Bradford a bit longer because I was working for the organization called Bradford Police Club for Young People, which looked at youth offenders as well as the reintegration of youth offenders into society. And then, whilst working for them, I ended up getting a contract research job for Mtapo. And it was Mtapo 100 Bull. And it was to do research in SADC on NEPAD, which is the new, what is it called? New program for African development. I'm probably saying it incorrectly, but yeah, it was for NEPAD. And that was interesting. And whilst at home, I was then focusing on writing my mother tongue, which is not a written language in South Africa. I come from a minority group in Durban, the Makua people, known
Okay.
as the Zanzibaris in Durban. And so I started documenting my language, which is prevalent in Mozambique, but not in South Africa. And looking at the historical journey of the Makua people from East and, Southern Africa to Durban. And then it goes back into, the history of East African slavery. And then, the British abolitionist movement, and then, these freed slaves that were saved from Arab dhows and taken to Zanzibar, some of them, and some of them rerouted to Natal, which was then a British colony, to work as cheap labor because, at that point the Indians were protesting and they didn't want to be, cheap labor in Durban anymore. So they needed to now bring somebody else to do the work. Um, so I ended up, doing I met my amazing supervisor, Raj Mestri, who had been doing research on the community. And we met at one point where he visited my mom and was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I told him what I was doing, and then he was like, "That is a PhD." And that's how I ended up doing a PhD on language and cultural maintenance amongst the minority Makua community in Durban.
Wow.
And looking at, again, the dynamic or the interesting thing about the Makua people in Durban is the fact that here's a minority immigrant community that has managed to maintain their language and culture for over 100 years, living in KwaZulu-Natal. So which makes it very unique in terms of, migrant communities. So yeah, I found that very fascinating, and I think in that process, finding myself and my voice again. And one of the things, with Makuas is also that we're a matrilineal society. And so, doing my thesis put so many things into perspective for me. So yeah, and maybe in all this, how did I end up in Norway? Whilst studying at Bradford doing peace studies, I was a poor student and I needed to look at, creative ways to get some money. So I ended up DJing and then met this Norwegian gentleman that had a lot of reggae music. And so I ended up, getting music from him, and the rest is history.
Oh, wow. Well, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to say, Grandfather Commanda also believed the indigenous languages were so important. I mentioned it earlier in terms of keeping the thread of so many bigger ideas than we are able to execute in the written, the vocal, the written language. And I say he planted that seed at the United Nations in 1993 with the first Indigenous conference, the Cry of the Earth conference, where he spoke entirely in his Algonquin language and then had himself translated to present the importance of language. Because, in a sense, it was, who are you if you are not, and if you can't speak, and if you can't project yourself through the language. And of course, that's a loss for many people like me. I mean, I studied English literature and I love it, but I know there are limitations too to how well I understand my Indian ancestry, my South African ancestry, my, yeah. But fortunately for me, Grandfather Commanda roped me in and enabled me to at least realize the importance of all of this that you share. So wonderful. And and when you say, the music and the DJ, when I studied my masters, I studied the literature of Peter Abrams, and it's now that I've been studying Grandfather Commanda, I say I've been exploring the discourse of William Commanda. But what I realized when I learned all these academic words very late in life was that actually, when I studied Peter Abrams, I was seeing the discursive power of song and music in the reclamation of identity and power in Africa. And so let me just finish with this. I have an image here of Grandfather Commanda at one of the training sessions of the Umtapo team. So Dina's Dina's work. He had invited Grandfather Commanda to the race relations conference,
Anti-racism.
anti-racism conference in 2001, and of course at that point. Grandfather did a workshop, in terms of this inclusion. I think Mrs. Biko was part of that discussion. And it was sort of like, really challenging issues in terms of how we move beyond our hurt and our
Yes.
oppression to finding our voice and, yeah. So that was really part of his effort. But I think I've lost the thread of what I wanted to say. Um, in terms of discourse. Oh yes, and so yeah, in this process, I realized at the justice workshop, because I did some of that training actually with my other boss, Ted Wachtel from Real Justice in the States. At
Yes.
one time,
Restorative justice.
we came
Yes.
to South Africa and we did training for
Yeah. And we
Umtapo
started that.
as well as for National Association of Child and Youth Care Workers with Zeniscan. But
Yes.
every session would open with people singing. And in the new pride of Canada, of South Africa, people sang in each of the official languages and animated the rest of the workshop presentation through song. So and movement. So yeah, that's why life is
Absolutely.
alive there. Do you have
I run workshops now and I start with music because it's, our form of meditation, our form of, healing and therapy. So, yeah.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And it actually points to a thing I struggle with a lot in terms of doing the William Commander work, including workshops such as this. His grandfather Commander, as you know, there was always the drum songs. We had actually had Wakeway who presented music at our May event,
Yes.
reflecting the memories of 2000. But also the indigenous drum was what ushers in an event. And because I'm not indigenous, uh, it's sometimes a challenge for me to incorporate all those elements that contribute, as you say, to the larger spirit. And we have started with our Facebook Live doing the smudge and sharing that energy. Whereas over the last, like, 8 or 10 years, I would do that part of the preparation privately. And then
Right.
I suddenly realized it was a gap for the other people who weren't exactly experiencing that awakening of spirit. And
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept to introduce to the academic world and to point out that it's
Absolutely.
actually quite different from religion and all those other approaches into deeper knowledge and yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I still do the smudge, and that's one of the things I've still carried with me with the sage, and now and again I have Palo Santo. And I mean, from South Africa, we have Mpepo, from Durban. So I have all these things that I have with me in a shell and, with my feather. And it's about giving thanks to, the ancestors and connecting and helping, asking them to guide us in our work. And, before I did this, I just, burnt a bit of Palo Santo and I said, please help me, to speak and share the wisdom that you want me to share. So that is such an important thing. And it helps, in so many ways. And yeah, the academic world needs to get with the program.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you very, very much for a very, very powerful sharing. And congratulations on all the good work that Umtapo keeps doing. I keep track of them now on Facebook, and Dina is doing a wonderful job moving things
Absolutely.
along. Yes, wow. Um, so, yeah. Well, thank you so much. My love to your family, and perhaps some other time we'll have like another chat about your work.
Yeah,
Refugees and all those issues are really very much a part of our big Circle of All
absolutely.
Nations agenda. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
Take
Take
care.
care and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sarifa. Bye bye.
Bye.
So that's Sarifa's background over there. Well, that was really, really special. I wish really actually I had people like Wakeway and others around, folk who were here part of our 2000 event. But yeah, thank you so much for that. I'm running a little late, but actually it uh, projects us very well into the next person I'm wanting to talk to. And I don't actually have an image of her here, but let me go and actually call her. Uh, and let's close that. And let's go to. I am now calling Anuradha Daphne, who is actually in Hawaii.
Ramla!
Hello!
Aloha!
Hello, how are you?
I'm
Ve-
doing good. How are you doing?
Very good. Can we see you? Can you share your.
Let me start the camera. I just need to get to my actual phone.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Oh, it's like it's a busy day here in Hawaii.
It's a busy day there in Hawaii. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, well, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Oh my
Let
gosh.
me put it on my computer because I had you guys on my computer and now you're on my phone. So
Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm going to take a photo as well because I couldn't actually get a photo of you to add to my PowerPoint, even though I tried to swipe some from Facebook. And I, of course, am not as well organized as you uh, as to remember all these old photographs. So it was really, really wonderful that the modern technology of Facebook suddenly reconnected me with you.
I know I was. It's like William Commanda, grandfather's always like for me. It's part of my my life. So it's just something that it won't go ever away. And obviously, I do a lot of indigenous work still. Like I'm here in Hawaii, we're doing Protect Mauna Kea. We're working like on so many different projects here with the local, the Ikekas, the natives in Hawaii. So I've been working a lot here and in California as well. So, but now that I know, I do come back to Quebec, but only once a year. So it's been
more of work that is related here in Hawaii, and anything that is related with all indigenous cultures around the world.
Okay. Wow, that's really super, super special. We have a few other friends who are doing like really important work, especially on a KO, and so wow. So what took you to Hawaii, and in fact, how did you find grandfather to start off with, and then how did your journey evolve?
Wow. Okay. So it started for I think I was like 19. Well, I have, from my background, I have Algonquin blood, so from heritage, so from my grandmother side. So I obviously at a certain point I wanted, and I had my Native American card, but I had never really like dove into the culture that much when I was young. And it took me to go to India when I was 17 by myself. Which is ironic.
Okay,
Like
okay.
a small village, with no other ethnicity or anything like that. And I end up in India by myself at 17. I traveled in the Himalayas. I learned Sharpa language. I lived with the refugees, the Tibetan refugees in the Himalayas and the caves. And I, learned multiple cultures. And then when I came back home, I realized I had never really taken time to integrate my own culture. So I decided to walk all Quebec. So I started walking, and I went all the way around Gaspésie and all the way up to Chibougamau. I walked like for a month and a half.
Oh my
And
God.
then, yeah,
I've driven that, so I can just hardly imagine. Oh my God.
I was 18 by then, like almost 19. And then I met, at that point, like I was praying just to be of service. And then I met my business partner. And that's how I managed to like get to go to different ceremonies with grandfather William Commanda, and because he was into music and did a lot of different music for Native American tribes and try to support and promote rights. So I ended up having a chance to go when I was 19, the first time to meet sorry, in Hawaii it's uncle, so grandfather William Commanda, and it was such a sweet meeting. Like I was, it's just such a sweet personality. And at that time, all the elders of different tribes were there, and the Hopis. So I started doing different work with multiple different tribes as well. Um, and like I still continued my connection in India and still continued to support different ashrams over there, like because I went to so many villages where people had nothing, like literally nothing, but they were so happy, like real happiness, not depending upon anything external. So for me, like witnessing that completely changed my reality. And then I really wanted to continue to connect to that and support and bring food to those villages, bring medicine to those villages that are all natural. And then obviously, we have that same reality in Quebec and Canada, and the rest of our tribes are also facing the same situation. So, but the difference with them is they never left their root connection of their spiritual connection. Us, the only reason why we weren't happy is because we had gone far from that. And Willie Menda, when he started to bring back that into his life, and we all know his journey, was really something powerful because he gave.
Something is wrong with the voice right now. Can't hear you. I can see you. Um, shall I recall? Shall I call you back? I'll call you. Hi there.
Hi. Can,
Okay, that's bad.
can you?
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Okay. So I think you were saying um, when Grandfather Commander revived, I guess, the attention to sharing the spiritual dimension, that things began to wake up for a lot of people.
Yes. And
Uh,
so, so what is amazing with that? Oh,
yeah, I can hear you.
okay. So what is amazing with that is that you could see the shift of consciousness and how people, even despite like poverty and everything, if you have that connection, you have joy, you have this essence that is real, that's eternal, that's not something that can be cut between, it's not dependent upon an external aspect, it's your connection to the source inside your own heart, and that's where true happiness starts. So I really, for me, William Commanda, it was just like that embodiment of that pure simplicity connection, that pure connection with the source. And each time I would meet him, he would always joke, and because I probably was pushing a little bit more revolutionary concepts of even diets and everything. So he was always like, I think he was, comparing me to like this native woman that used to live in the past that was renowned in the Algonquin tribe, and he was always like, you always like try to push everything, and like bringing different saints from India to meet, because it's in the prophecy, in the different prophecies, that if we would have met the right brother, the one that had a spiritual connection, everything would have been different. And for my perspective, limited perspective, was always that the real brother was from India, from that culture. So
Okay. Uh huh.
so there's a lot of things that we would share, like in just private talks, and he would always laugh and like just like cuddle me and just be like, yeah. So and even one year I went to OIS to represent Canada for Native American rights, and because Algonquin tribe had never been represented in Washington, D.C. So I went to get his blessing, and I think, though, I don't know, I still have those videos, I think. I could probably share that with you.
Okay.
When I went to get his blessing for that, he did a full ceremony, and then also consulted the belts before I left, and then I did the prayers in front of all the ambassadors of all America, and they asked me to do the actual opening ceremony for that blessing, which was really nice, because that's where we managed to move forward with a lot of different rights for protecting indigenous tribes that year. And I asked that, we put all our difference aside, and that we're able to just build something that has more of a deeper roots, that we can all, um, build, like plant a tree that will basically give fruits to all nations and all different parts of society. So that was beneficial. But I know it was all his blessings.
Wow. Wow. Just say that again. OIS, meaning?
OIS is a organization for all different. It's the organization of America's indigenous tribe. So
Indigenous.
all
Okay.
different indigenous tribes of America that gets together. They have a meeting every year in Washington, D.C. And
Okay.
then,
And
but now they finished. They did all the rules and all the protection rights. So that's completed. Um,
okay, wonderful. And when again, more or less, did you go and engage with that?
that was, I think, in 2009.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Yeah, so well, I was saying earlier we're wanting to create an archive on William Commander stories. So at some point, it'll be wonderful to have your videos as part of that. But as you say, yes, it's sort of like whatever he put his head to engage with uh, seemed to have like sparked really interesting energies, eh?
Yeah,
And
I
flow.
can put it that way.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting journey, and I just he's always in my heart. Let's put it that way. He's always like a beautiful inspiration. Even if I'm living now in Hawaii for most of the time, um, I still like I did bring the representation of the Algonquin tribe to the Mauna Kea mountain, the tallest mountain in the world. So we have here in Hawaii, Mauna Kea. She's taller than Everest, and the connection from Mauna Kea connects. It's basically like a satellite that connects like the mana, the frequency of all different sacred places on Earth. So having the flag on the top of Mauna Kea when we were doing the protection for the mountain of the Algonquin tribe was really something for me
wow.
that was important because it's not only sending prayers for all nations, but it's also standing up for the earth that she is not just something to exploit. They wanted to build the largest telescope on the mountain, and the Hawaiians, like it's something like when it's almost like a butterfly effect when people wake up in part of the world about their connection to the earth. It has that effect everywhere. And again, in 2000, like about 5 years ago, they started to go in court and say, no, there's enough telescope on top of the mountain. You guys cannot build another one. This is an indigenous land, and on top of that, it has a biodome that is unique on planet Earth. So all native, like in Hawaii, and also many different Native Americans came and just protected and stood there for 2 months. Actually, it went on for 6 months. They lived on the mountain at super high altitude to protect, like physically to protect the mountain from being built.
That's so pretty incredible. I don't know if you know our friend Dawn Ferguson. She's someone from really Maryland, Washington D.C. area, but she really considers Hawaii her home, and
Oh,
has also like taken her prayers to the volcanoes and to the mountains. But I was finishing William Commanda's thesis around about that time, and one of the images I associate with it is really the flow of the lava, during that time period,
yeah.
and the fire that I guess Earth was putting on to support what you guys were doing. And of course, really, really interesting. I was saying earlier that grandfather's great nephew died a couple of days ago. But a few
Mm,
years ago, I took him and his mother, Daisy Jaco Williams' niece, as
mm-hmm.
well as the two boys, Billy and John, to the ancient sacred mountain of the Algonquins in northern Quebec.
Mm.
I had driven grandfather Commanda there a few times before, really up and up and
Yeah.
up, yeah, in all sorts of frightening pathways. But we were able to go there, and
Mm.
we actually took Karl-Heinz Rauscher, a German colleague of ours who's very much into systemic constellation work, and we took him and his brother-in-law up there. When I went with Daisy and her two boys, we were not able to reach the top because now it had become like a touristy kind of place. And then when I
Mm.
went a few last year with another niece, was even further down that you could access this sacred mountain, because now they were creating a park. And the irony was Algonquin people were protesting moose hunting, and there I have photographs of the moose being killed and hanging on the tree, trees being cut, but it's the larger thing. So it's in a sense, yes, part of the issue is the protection of sacred land, the sacred sites, and we of course have such a challenge here at Shadia Victoria Island with the sacred falls. But it's
Yeah.
really more what you said about the energy at particular places on the earth and its implications for all over.
Hmm. It's all interconnected. Like every sacred sites on planet Earth are interconnected, and that's part of our tradition in Native American. If you see, like I did a few years ago, I don't know if you've ever heard about Spider Rock.
No.
It's an ancient, well, the Cherokees and the Hopis. It's in their stories, and Spider Rock is known to be the connection pole of the entire web. Like there's an entire web that interconnects everything on planet Earth. All tribes from every indigenous background, everyone that is connected to Mother Earth, basically. And so I was called by Spider Rock to go and bring people there and do prayers at her rock, which you have to go horseback riding with, all the way down into the canyons. It's super dangerous to get there, and it's in Arizona at the Mesa. So it's like five. It's a connection of five different sacred lands together into one place. So we went there, and it was so powerful. Like it was like going to a land where there were giants and everything. It was insane. Like the frequency in that area was like ancient, and so ancient that it's almost like stories from the legends that you would read. But all the prayers we did that year, that June called me from Washington, and that year is when all the documents were signed for the OIS. And at that particular time when we were in the middle of the canyon doing all the prayers, and there's these ancient place that how do the vortex like stay up and powerful? It's because of our prayers. If not, they go dormant. It's a little bit like a muscle. If you do not use it every day, it will go dormant. If you use it every day, and if you do offerings every day, it's active. And it will have a potential of really doing something that can make a big shift. So it's our responsibility, like, you guys' our responsibility to keep Victoria Island and all these sacred places, powerful. And the same thing for all natives that are, who is a native? Someone that respects the earth. And so everyone around the world is responsibility is to basically respect the earth wherever they are, and be able to do ceremonies and prayers wherever they are within their culture.
And, thank you for sharing all of that. It's very, very special. The last person I talked to, Sarifa, and I were beginning to talk a little bit about the spiritual dimension, really. And I was saying what a challenge it is for me to do it, really, to integrate some of that in the Circle of All Nations work, being non indigenous, and also to introduce it into the academy, that being a separate kind of like zone of knowledge. But what I did, I don't know if you can see this drum here. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Well, that is a spider drum that grandfather Commanda created many, many years ago. And he says he went into his shop one winter and there was a giant spider there. And there should be no spiders hanging around in the midwinter in a cold shop. And he thought, well, wow. So then he did his usual thing, which was go for his morning walk. He came back, looked around again, no spider. But he created then his drum, and you see the energetic marking really of like the lightning, the passion, the fire, and of course the inclusion of the four colors, which in part for us symbolize the four symbolic races, you know, the people of the east and the people of the south and the people of the west and the people of the north, and that integration. So the drum is really centered on grandmother spider
Yeah, and
who
it's in the prophecy that Spider Woman, and she's the one that interconnects all nations together. And that was a service that William Commanda had. It was this connection. He would bring all the ladies together. Like from the first time I met him over 20 something years ago, that was what he was doing, is bringing all the leaders together, trying to find a medium. What is our interconnection between all of us? And Spider Woman is basically she comes to people to help them reset the grid, because there's an invisible grid that exists around the earth, and it's always been there. It's a communication grid that we can all have access to, but we have access to it when we're of service.
yeah.
So, and it's funny because it's like I never, I don't really like spiders. So when that frequency came, like I want to go to, you have to come to Spider Rock, and we had to go on Mustangs all the way down. There's wild Mustangs everywhere there, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm always willing to do everything, but I was like, that's a hard one. But it, you know, we all like what you're doing, and trying to get all these archives, trying to get all this information together is so important, and trying to connect all those people that are working for the same goal around the world, it's also important. um, there's another organization that I work with. I went in Peru in 2000, like 2 years ago. It's called the United Nations of the Spirits, and I will send you the information, because that's an organization that we need to, like, that this this entire what you're working should be part of.
Okay. Thank you. That's so intriguing because, the PowerPoint I have over here is of one of the spiritual leaders from India that you had brought and introduced to Grandfather Commanda. And to my great shame, I know very little about the Hindu heritage. There's an image of Grandfather Commanda with Dalai Lama, and he met him several times. And in fact, that is me peeking behind there, but obviously hiding. A grandfather with the sacred wampum bells, the Japanese elder Shiro Kenge and the Holotropic Organization and things like that. But just the other day, by chance, I or not, I met this professor at St. Paul's University, who one of the students of his had done a paper on Grandfather Commanda and the gatherings that she used to come to at Manawaki.
Wow.
And through that, I ended up meeting this professor who's done much research on meditation and dialogue and interreligious um, contemplation, evolving out of his Catholic heritage, but very much like you, intrigued by the thinkers and the swamis of India. And he created this very interesting video on this particular religious leader who inspired his work. And it's interesting how much of the imagery is located in the earth and the mountains and the water and the physicality of Mother Earth. Yeah, so that's Professor Fabrice Blee, who has suddenly come into this. But one of the things I was kind of like laughing about, sort of, was when Grandfather Commanda first invited me to his spiritual gathering. I was like working for the government on indigenous issues, and I was not so keen to go. But I knew he was a big shot elder, and I thought, how do you kind of like duck out of it? So I said, well, I'm kind of like not looking for anything, and I can't see why I'd come to a spiritual gathering. And he said, yeah, well, that's a $64 question why I'd come. And then he invited me again a week later, and I was still dodging. And I said, well, I'm not looking for anything spiritual. He said, anyone can learn. And so I rented a station wagon. I got my foam headboard and I created a mattress. I bought granola bars and I bought orange juice and I went camping at grandfather's gathering. And then, of course, it opened my eyes to all that he was trying to do and all that the indigenous peoples and the indigenous elders and the non-indigenous peoples were attempting to do to advance a new level of thinking and understanding and knowledge and
Wow.
yeah. So it's really wonderful to connect with you. Do you have anything more that you'd like to share at this point, or we can carry on conversations into the future, obviously?
Well, I just think one thing that really always stayed in my mind is when one time I think you were there that time, when William Commanda took out his waypoint belt, and each time I would see him, I would always ask for the present. But one time I asked for him to describe the future, uh, the belt for the future, and when he was holding, and you know how he would just touch it and then just connect and read it. Um, he really emphasized that there's two ways it can go. It can go not good, or it can go okay. Like there's a path that it can go up and for consciousness, and it aligns with many prophecies that, because I've studied Sanskrit, which is one. Also for me, it was important to understand from different perspectives. So we do have this window that if we're able to get through, and it aligns with what William Commanda was saying, is that if we are all able to open up to consciousness and not just define ourselves by the limited aspect, oh, I'm Algonquin, I'm Iroquois, I'm like, from another group or something like that. Like, if we're able to really harmonize all our differences, and we're all souls, we're all part of the earth, and that finding our common ground, there's hope for humanity that is like, it would go to a level of consciousness that is way beyond our imagination. If we stay limited and we separate each other and we don't come together as one nation, then the future is not positive for anyone. So those are important facts that I always kept in mind, and basically for me, he's fueled my determination to continue. Like, I travel around the world, like, well, right now obviously not with COVID, but I've been traveling around the world twice a year, going around the world and trying to share that information and that message. So I just have lots of gratitude for his patience in teaching, and also for everything that he shared, because it has kept like an imprint in my consciousness and for what I'm doing. It's like fuel.
Okay. Wow. Very, very special. I guess he must have planted you in Facebook at that particular moment that I noticed you again. Because, gosh, yeah. I mean, he had so much passing through at every moment. Such a flow.
I think the most important thing is, for me, has never been like, I don't need, like, I don't even think I have one picture of me with William Commanda. I don't, it's not, it for me is about the service. Like, I just want to do what I need to do. That's all. I don't want anything that comes at, like, no name, no recognition. That's not the goal, because those are actually obstacles to do what you really should be doing with your heart. So, and I know you've been doing all this relentless service for William Commanda. I've seen you. I've seen how when he was staying with you, everything you were doing, like a full dedication to his mission and everything. And sometimes, like, the little resistance that you shared initially, that's the resistance that makes it that, yes, that's the person, because you're not coming with any other personal motivation, just with your heart. And William Commanda had that vision. He could see that through people. His simplicity made it that his humility made it that egos would just melt in front of him. And for me, that's something that I always look up to, because those are real teachers. Those are trees that have so much fruit of knowledge that they're bending down, and everyone can pick those fruits. And if they're wise enough, they'll go for that tree. And we've been honored to have his presence, and it's still living in his teaching, and you're still sharing that to the rest of the world. So thank you for your service.
Well, Miigwech. Thank you very much
Miigwech.
for joining us. Thank you for sharing all your wonderful thoughts and wonderful energy. And yeah, best with the good work. And we'll hopefully have other such conversations into the future.
Yes,
And
definitely.
maybe with a few other people who'd be interested in engaging in such a conversation. Yeah, wonderful. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank
miigwech.
you. Bye bye. Well, I guess William Commanda has his energy and his agenda. I hope Stephen McFadden is being very patient with us, but I have to now call Lindsay, and it's kind of like appropriate because, oh my goodness gracious me, I didn't realize we were going to actually be talking so much about sacred sites. And now, let me see. Um, one moment, please. Hello. Hi, Lindsay. It's Romola.
Hi there.
How are you?
All right.
That's good. Let me just say we've been doing our Facebook Live event to commemorate the 107th year since the birth of Grandfather Commanda. And we've had some fascinating conversations with people who've been engaged with his work over the last 2 decades. Uh, one sitting in Norway, another in Hawaii, and now I've done a tiny little PowerPoint page on you, and I've called it A Passion for Chaudier. And I have an image of you at one of our gatherings. Actually, I think with John Brack behind you. I guess you can't see this. And I say, Lindsay Lambert is a longtime friend of Circle of All Nations and Grandfather Commanda, and has participated in countless activities with us over the years. He brought his passion for the Chaudier Falls to Grandfather William Commanda in the 90s via a stereoscope, and I'm actually showing people that strange item that you brought us in the 90s.
Okay.
I'm showing them really a glass bookmark that incorporates then a picture of the Chaudier Falls. I'm showing them some of those postcards that would go into the stereoscope, and through that how Grandfather was able to see the Chaudier Falls in 3 dimensions and engage in some of that energy of the work. And I say also that he brought us many paintings of the ancient sacred site as depicted by the early colonial settlers and artists. And I say you also engage passionately in the challenge to safeguard the ancient meeting place as a public place, consistent with Grandfather Elder Commanda's vision for Asanabka, tracing history and legislative documentation in this ongoing process. And I say, note your latest opinion piece, and let me grab it so I can show people on my live stream. You can see it. And it's basically Canada's National War Memorial on Chaudière Island, which is there in the Oscar publication, November 2020. And of course, this being Remembrance Day is particularly special. Your article there, especially given that grandfather's vision was for a peace and healing center in this sacred site. And I say finally, consistent also with grandfather's discussion of the natural medicine wheel created by the Gatineau from the north and the Rideau from the south, meeting the Ottawa flowing from the west to the east, you created the well-known medicine wheel graphic image of the sacred landscape and the rivers. And I have another photo of you that I took some time ago at your place. And you're holding the image of the waterfalls with the two semicircle image holding the paintings. And I'll finally add, I'll just introduce my grandmother into the story. The reason I saw you just a couple of days ago was because I asked you to please fix my grandmother's silverware, which presumably comes from India, which I've had over the past year without doing anything about it. And then that brought me to you and our discussion of the work and your passion. So here we go. I'll invite you to say a few words, Lindsay. Thank you.
I actually thought it was very timely when you showed up. But I was thinking, I was trying to remember when I first met grandfather, and I think it was in the 1990s. But then I was trying to recall when I attended my first sacred gathering of his, and I thought that has to have been 1995 or 96. But fortunately, I keep a journal, so it was 1996.
Okay.
And so and I don't think I missed a year until I didn't go up the year when he died, 2011. But my last year there was 2010, and then I was there to see, and then I noticed that over the years I was there to work.
Yes, I recall you brought us parking signs one year.
Yeah. That was fun. It was the people were parking on the road outside, and there was the band police officer who was quite angry. He said people aren't supposed to be there. They should know they're not supposed to be there, and they had some discussion with the peacekeeper and of the event, and of course I came in and I said, unfortunately they're coming from somewhere else, and they're not any signs. And then the peacekeeper looked at me and said, "You have a job." That was Wayne.
Okay.
And then I suppose I did. And then the next year I went to the city of Ottawa building where they deal with like parking and signage, and I was asking if they had any temporary no parking signs, and the fellow handed me a whole stack.
Yes.
Of temporary signs. Then I bought some like wooden sticks and sharpened them and stapled the signs on, and I threw them in the car and brought them up. And Wayne was having trouble but there was one I think truck park where he didn't want it and he couldn't get to move it. But then he put the sign up in front. They were gone about 10 minutes later, and of course these signs have no teeth to them. It's just, but in both languages, saying parking is prohibited. And but we had the most wonderful fun with those signs.
Yes, you did. A strong memory for me, and I guess it really also shows this is how we all had our opportunities to animate the work with whatever interest or passion we could share. So I was glad to see this photo of you from the gathering, and that's the one that my colleagues out there in the cyber world are seeing.
Yeah. But as I went there as and gradually every year I was going up there and realizing I was going up to work. And then the last few years I was one of the pipes in the Circle at Dawn. And it was always wonderful.
Yeah, it was a moment in time, really. I think folk who experienced that were touched in a way that is quite different from, other ways of learning and knowing. And yeah, it's just not something that one can replicate, really. But it nonetheless sparked all sorts of exciting fires. And I mean, the sparks of the fires, like I say, reached one of our friends, a young woman who joined us in 2000, and took that energy back to her work in South Africa, now animates, even to this day, thoughts about grandfather Commanda in Norway. And likewise, Anuradha was just talking about, her meetings with grandfather. She synthesized the threads of her own journey, and then the amazing work she's taken around the globe to connect people at that level where we realize, human consciousness is operating at a place that allows for some kind of unification, of spirit and energy. And
Good catalyst and good place to meet.
exactly. And one of the things she talked about was the protection of the highest mountain peak there in Hawaii, and the energy that people engaged in protecting that. And we talked very briefly about Chaudia Victoria Island and how really different folk are in their own ways still doing what they can to acknowledge and awaken people to the importance of this particular sacred site on the earth's face. And you, I was saying, were impassioned by Chaudia for quite a long time before it really became part of a project.
Yeah, it's, I'm trying to, I can't really remember what inspired me, but it seems like it's always been with me. I know it hasn't, but I had a 3D photograph, a stereo view, like long before I knew the Chaudière Falls. And I'm still doing it. The Privy Council and approved an order in council in December 2017 transferring the lands on the Chaudière and Albert Islands, which are public purpose crown lands, for private development. And as far as I can tell, this is unconstitutional. It goes against the existing legislation, and I've been seeking I've been sort of demanding like copies of the Acts of Parliament where Parliament rescinded the status of it as public purpose crown lands and approved it for private development. I just keep on getting stonewalled and getting the runaround, and they don't want to admit that they don't have anything. And I'm now in have an appeal in federal court trying to get the answer on it. Anyway.
Well, thanks for your ongoing passion, and thanks for following that particular thread, so conscientiously over the years. And thank you also for sharing, your research and your papers and your writings and your documents with so many of us over the past 8 years, really, at least in the context of this issue.
Longer than that.
But longer than that in terms of the bigger scope of things. And I know, of course, you are obviously not yet as modern as grandfather Commanda, the .com elder, who is very busy on Facebook. And so you painstakingly have typed, have printed, and mailed your documents to people, a real labor of commitment to Chaudière, and thank you very much
Also,
for
I'm
that.
just remembering of what I think I talked to them. They're selling pirate corn. How's that? Well, a buccaneer. He thought it was hilarious, and he announced it to everybody. So.
Well, that's really, really cute. Yeah. Uh, oh well. So, is there anything more you'd like to share at this point?
I enjoyed the grandfather's events, and I always look forward to his Wampum Bell teachings when he gave them. And the events were a good bringing together of many people and a good catalyst for many things.
Yeah, indeed, indeed, they were really, really special. So thank you so much for being part of that energy in multiple, multiple ways, and thank you for joining us today. And again, all the best with what's coming up next, your hip operation. I mean, that's been another challenge too, as you've moved around to places over the winters to take, your stories about Chaudier to folk. I know none of that has been necessarily easy, but I hope your operation will come soon, and then hey, that you'll be able to go find your mom in
Victoria.
BC, yeah, and keep.
I usually go, and I'm usually there this time of year.
Yeah.
But I'm not in good shape to travel, and then I don't want to like my mom's 90. I don't want to get off the airplane with a dark friend alongside me.
Okay. Well, you can't do that now, but let's hope the other thing falls into place well, and then that you will soon be able to do your annual connection. And thank you then, Lindsay, for this, and I'll look forward to seeing my grandmother's uh, silver plate in good time. Okay, look how she connected us at this moment. It's wonderful. Okay, take good care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, and now let me go and find Stephen McFadden, who now brings us to the journey motif part of our work. No, let me just disconnect here. I have to actually go and find, let me just say, excuse me a second. Facebook is not cooperating so easily right now. Just let me find Messenger. Excuse me, folk, I'm being interrupted. Delphina, I'll call you later. Please let me carry on with the agenda right now. I'll try and track you later. Oh my goodness. Just excuse me a moment, folk. I'm just not really getting Facebook to cooperate so well. And I will hope you can see the backgrounder information on my PowerPoint regarding Stephen McFadden. Okay, let us try again. Search. And there we go.
Hello, Romola.
Hello, I'm so sorry. This global conversation has gone all over the map and taken up all of our time. But glad to see you.
Well, it's good to see you as well, and I've been enjoying listening to the discussions.
Oh, excellent. You've been able to follow us then.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and it's kind of like a perfect moment for us to introduce this next thread in our conversation. I'm so sorry. This global conversation has gone all over the map and taken up all of our time. But glad to see you.
Hi, it feels like we're having yeah. A double conversation.
Yeah, it's almost like it's being recorded in some fashion.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and it's kind of like a perfect moment for us to introduce this next thread in our conversation. I'm sorry. This double conversation is okay. It's
gearing up possibly for some warm weather soon.
Stephen, I'm going to end this call and try you again.
Maybe some Costa Rican vibe. Next step. Come on, humanity. Come on, humanity. Let's take the next step. Let's resolve this virus. Let's build a better world. Let's practice conscious capitalism. Let's do the thing.
Oh my God, what the heck is happening?
Hello, Romola.
Hello again. I think everybody in the techno world wants to join the conversation. So hopefully they're all listening to you while you share your very special work with us. And can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and now I hear the phone ringing again. I'm not going to take that one. Hello?
Hello, I think. Hello again. I think everybody in the techno world wants to join the conversation. So no. Hopefully they're all listening to you. Okay, Stephen. Your... That is not okay. Is that better?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So I was saying we organize our gatherings in this kind of medicine wheel fashion, where at a certain point we talk about the journey, and at this point you're here connected with us on two important threads. One in terms of the Odyssey of the Eighth Fire and your amazing work tracking the Sunbow 5 walk, and then your deep agroecology book, which recently received the top honor in the NIEA's environmental category. And so, congratulations on that. We've been tracking that work since last September, I do believe.
Thank you.
So, I want to just turn the mic over to you to share with us.
Well, I want to join with everyone in wishing Grandfather Commanda in spirit a happy birthday, and he must be pleased to know how fondly and lovingly he's remembered by so many people for all the good that he did throughout his life, and through you that work continues. So it's wonderful. I guess I might say I met grandfather, I think maybe was 89 or 90. I came up to Maniwaki with a friend, and I was researching the book Profiles in Wisdom. Native elders speak about the earth. And so I got to meet him and sit in his living room and hear some of the teachings about the seven fires. And then, I guess it was around 1994 that the whole idea of this walk from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific came up, a walk of people of all colors and all faiths. And two events had preceded that. One was when Grandfather Commanda and the DeConte brothers all went to the United Nations headquarters with the Hopi, the Lakota, the Micmac, the Maya, 7 different nations altogether, Los Huicholes from Mexico, to present the Cry of the Earth conference. And at that conference, Grandfather Commanda presented the Seven Fires wampum belt and talked about the teachings that it represented. So it was precisely 9 months after all the elders went to United Nations headquarters and made this presentation that a white buffalo calf was born in Wisconsin. That was the first of many, because there came a whole bunch after that. But when that white buffalo calf was born, I won't go into those teachings today, but there was kind of a recognition that it was time to do something in service of the vision of an 8th fire, because as many people will know who have studied the teachings of the 7 fires, there's a promise that we could light an 8th fire of peace and respect and certainly sustainability. If we were to go back and see if we could find the teachings that had been left by the side of the trail long ago. And so that really was the idea of the walk, to bring together all kinds of different people from all kinds of different traditions, to walk together for 8 months and see what we could find along the side of the trail that might be of service in this time. And Grandfather Commanda was the spiritual advisor for the walk, but he was really so much more than that. He kept journeying from the Kitigan-Zibi Reserve in Ottawa to wherever the walk was, as we made steps. We went back to New York City, and then we went south to Washington, D.C., and then around to the Qualla boundary in North Carolina, the Cherokee Reservation, and then to Memphis, Tennessee. And what struck me is, I think it was 83 or 84 at the time, and he took a bus from Ottawa all the way to Memphis, and he did this with his, he paid for it with his pension money. Of course, he lived very humbly and didn't have a lot of money, but he got a pension from the government, which wasn't much, but he was happy to spend it. And he would, if he saw one of the walkers had no money, he would give them some money out of his own pocket. He was that generous. But to think of him at age 83 or 84 riding for what, maybe 48 hours nonstop from Ottawa to Memphis, and then guiding us in ceremonies as we went to the Lorraine Motel where Martin Luther King was assassinated, and we made prayers. And just to say it, I don't know that it conveys the power that we felt together doing that in unity under his guidance and with the songs. And as I'm telling the story, I remember that while we were there in Memphis, there was a big story in the newspaper about a high school boy who had been shot by a classmate. Now, this was 25 years ago, and it was absolutely shocking news at that time. Unfortunately, we've had so many school shootings in the United States since then that it might not even stand out, but everyone in the community was appalled, and so were we. And so the walk went with Grandfather Commanda to the school where the boy had been killed, and we had an assembly with all the students there. And I remember Grandfather Commanda just talked a little bit, and finally, the room settled down. Of course, these are all high school kids, and they're full of energy, and they were upset. But when it was his time to talk, they settled and they listened. And he didn't say much. He said it in a very slow and clear voice, asking them to remember a few important points about the honesty, the caring, the sharing, and the respect. And they could see that this was an elder who was giving them really the truth from his heart. What he did next was he had his shaker, his rattle, and he stood and he sang the Algonquin forgiveness song, which I have never heard before and have never heard since. And he did it in a soft voice, but he was not perfect. I never heard Grandfather sing but that one time, that one day, and the beauty of his voice. And you could see the feeling come over the assembly of all the young people who were there as they recognized the beauty of the great spiritual blessing that was conveyed. So he was forgiving everyone and everything that had happened. And as he would always say, that doesn't mean you forget. Sometimes you need to remember in order to protect yourself, but you don't hang on to the bitterness. And so I think we dispersed a great ocean of bitterness that day in Memphis. So the walk went on, and gosh, I could recount so many adventures. I don't know that I want to go into them specifically. I've tried to tell them in my writing through a daily journal, Odyssey of the Eighth Fire, that's up there on the internet. And this year, because it's exactly a quarter century since we did our long walk, I've been telling the story with memes. And I believe, Romola, could see the screen earlier that you mentioned that and gave people a way to go. And I would encourage people to go, because every time I look at those slides, I'm learning again and again and again. And in about 3 or 4 days, it will be the 145th day of the walk. We walked for 230 days altogether. And here I've taken the Algonquin word that you use so frequently and that Grandfather told us about. I hope I will pronounce it correctly. Jinowe Degunuk. Does that sound?
Yeah, Jinawe Daganuk. Yeah.
Okay, I knew I was going to slaughter the pronunciation, but I won't slaughter the meaning because it's so beautiful. It's acknowledging that we're all connected and that we have a relationship with this beautiful earth that we inhabit and all the creations of it. And so to hear you say it, perhaps you would say the word again, because I would like to hear it.
Jinawe Daganuk. That is how I recall grandfather saying it. And you know, it was a constant word in his prayer, and and then I started to include it when I was writing some of his words down. And then one day he said, Romola, you've written Gina Way Daganuk on my back. Isn't that, yeah. And I do actually have an image of him one time wearing his leather buckskin outfit. And actually, it's kind of funny because at this point he was going to be part of a movie. And it was a movie um, that was documenting Chief Seattle's words. Okay, so he's going into act with the big green backdrop and all of that in his outfit. And I took a photograph of him from the back, and it was like I could just imagine really always that Gina Dagan written on my back. But with respect to the movie, he didn't exactly approve of some of the interpretation of the words in accordance to what he believed the Indian leader, chief, would have actually intended. So he took it upon himself to translate it to suit him because it was only his version of what is like authentically the voice of the connection with the earth that he would be. And that is why I always know, you know, when somebody says they're talking on behalf of grandfather, if they haven't got the authentic thread there, then I know they're appropriating his voice. But because he was so meticulous about that understanding, it's not exactly the words, it's the understanding. But anyway, Gina Way Daganuk was written on his back. And of course, earlier we had a discussion about Ubuntu, and in South Africa, we talk about it as I am because you are. So it's your essence that really uh, gives life to my voice. And it became a very big word, an important word in the post apartheid South Africa because we were reconciling our racial differences. And in a sense, Metaquiosin also carries that notion but bigger. But because grandfather Commanda at every point animated relationship and connection with nature, uh, his huge understanding of Jinewe Daganuk, the cosmic connection, the people connection, the connection with the living rock, the living waters, the living trees, the animals, all of that then becomes part of like a huge zone of connection. And as I learned myself how to find that thread of connection, I found then I've got like a whole world around me that is supporting me all the time. And why I say William Commanda did his Circle of All Nations outreach was because he found a lot of people on his continent had come from places elsewhere, many of them leaving burdensome experiences and lives like I did in South Africa, but without recognizing our place on his mother earth, we were floating. Some of us were abusing her and exploiting her, but others, like those children you just mentioned, were kind of lost without a grounding. And he then introduced us to his mother, Mother Earth, and made us both his relation and theirs. Now, the use of the word grandfather is quite interesting because it's really actually a Western attribute that we impose upon grandfather Commanda. Many indigenous peoples will call him William, will call some people will call him Chief Commander, whatever. But a lot of us didn't know how to approach such an important, special person except via some word of respect. And elder was distant, and chief was distant, and and the grandfather allowed for that relationship. And the relationship is really what I think he presented us really in order to introduce us to Mother Earth, which then, is really the other part of the work you're doing too, right? So that's Gina Wedaganuk.
Well, that understanding, if not the word, is what I carried into writing the book Deep Agroecology. So agroecology is in and of itself kind of an intimidating word, at least down here in the United States. We don't hear it much, but internationally, agroecology is appreciated as the term for describing sustainable or holistic ways of drawing our sustenance from the earth. So it's farms and food that are done in a beautiful, clean, and healthy way. And there are, of course, many systems for that. There are organics, biodynamics, regenerative. You have a whole long laundry list of names. And I think of agroecology as kind of an umbrella that embraces them, and also the concept of social justice, because we all eat on the backs of the laborers in the field who so often experience very unjust conditions, and yet without them we would not eat, we would not have food. So it's both an environmental and a social movement that is picking up speed, uh, around the world, and I think becoming better known in Canada and the U.S. Actually, it's much more developed in Mexico, Central America, and South America, but becoming better known here. So I wrote the book Deep Agroecology to bring some indigenous understandings more fully into the light. I wrote it for a general audience, not for farmers or cooks per se, although they certainly could learn from it, but for every household, everyone who partakes of food. There's no exceptions there, at least not that I know of. And in a sense, those farmers are ambassadors to the earth, and if they're treating the earth badly, uh, it's because we're letting that happen, because we're supporting that. Every dollar, every loonie that we spend is a vote on the kind of food system that we will have, and will it be a clean, sustainable system with social justice for the people who do the work of growing the food, preparing the food, serving the food. So I was able to bring this understanding of the wholeness, the connection, the relationship that exists through the book Deep Agroecology. And I was glad to have the opportunity and to be able to weave so many indigenous voices in and among some of the teachings. And so that's what I have to share. I guess I could say of the walk, in some respects I feel like I'm still walking, still trying to uncover more of the treasures that were left along the side of the trail for us to find. And certainly there's discussions that you've been having today with the different friends and associates are revelatory in that sense. They are the treasures that were left by the side of the trail and that need to be picked up and employed again. So it's a high service, and I thank you for that.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, and for, one of our students the last time I think we talked, maybe in May or something like that, followed through on the Odyssey and came to her own thoughts about what you had produced over there. So it was really like neat, because partly what I'm doing, okay, partly this is taking William Commanda's thinking into the academic world. So it is a part of my efforts to see to what extent we can engage the indigenous, the grassroots, the non-government organizations, government organizations, and academic worlds in a future movement towards knowledge sharing, thinking on important issues, on issues that are important to all of us. And I myself, fortunately, have come from intense engagement in each of those domains, whether it was government, whether it was indigenous. And I see that I have learned so much from each of them, but alone each is missing something. And in terms of the tools to march into the future. And so this is an effort to draw some bridges. It's the Circle of All Nations bridge building. One of the things I just studied recently, I read recently, was what is the purpose of universities? And I discovered universities, were first to create an ideology, and they came really out of churches and the religious thinking in terms of creating ideological basis for knowledge sharing. Then they were to uh, create the elite. So the educated people then became the elite groups. Then it was to provide service, and so they became the public servants, the functionaries. And there was also a thread that looked to new knowledge and new development. One group were these science universities then that evolved in Germany, particularly, that sort of challenged some of the church based universities. And so science, probably linking in with the Martin Luther heritage and all of that, became uh, articulated in some of those uh, land based universities in the States. And they became the agricultural colleges, and they became the knowledge bases that in some fashion contributed to the big mechanical farming, those
Oh,
kinds
yes,
of things.
in many cases.
Yes, and just recently I watched an interview where there was some farmer now saying, no, I've got to throw away all of that and I've got to go back and reach for some ecological approaches to re-articulate farming. And in a sense, to me, your book is capturing this new energy that is now evolving. So it is also a very key part of the kind of like research that I'm wanting to do in terms of the William Commanda approach. You know, you're moving away from those land universities and that type of science to a more holistic and perhaps more genuine.
Yeah, and thankfully there are millions of people in North America and around the world who are working. This is not my personal vision, but it's a vision shared by millions, and so we're making progress.
Excellent. Okay, the
Okay.
journey continues. Thank you so much for joining us. And you notice that famous photo there. I remember when you took grandfather Commanda to buy his what is that, fourth
The
level.
hat, yeah, in Santa Fe, we all went together. I remember the day well, and he thought this is the very hat that I had, and he got one just like it. And he looked so handsome in it. I guess it got rained on one day though, and you can't get your cowboy hat too wet, or it turns into kind of a shapeless mishmash.
No kidding. Well, you loved that, and then we had already waiting this band of feathers that we were able to
Yes,
put around it. But I remember how he then insisted that I should get one, and
you look great in it too. Yeah, I remember.
yeah, I'm still not at ease with it. But I used to make this joke. No, not only did he buy me a cowboy hat, but then he wanted me to wear it.
You look very stylish in it. Yeah.
Oh well, maybe that's going to be the new Romola into the future in my journey. Yeah.
They're very practical too if you're out in the sun a lot, which is tended to be part of my life, being out of doors. So
Oh,
good. Well, I'm going to go now. I've got to attend to a number of things, but I'm so glad we had the opportunity to talk.
and thanks for your patience and waiting for us. And we're all the best. And I'll come find you in Omaha when we're really able to. Take good care.
Yes, and to sit together and have tea, that would be wonderful.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Miigwech, bye-bye.
Miigwech. Bye. Tinawi daganuk. Okay, so yeah, please excuse all that fumbling as we try to get that right. And now let me see where we're at. Um, okay, so my next image really is an acknowledgement of Fran and Gaston. As I said, part of our work is about demonstrating Grandfather Commander's approach to knowledge building. And I don't know whether um, Fran Denis is around and whether she would like to say anything. Oh, I see lots of friends out there. And I see folk posting things. Thank you very much. I'll go through all your names soon. Fran, if you're there, you must video call me. That's the best way to do it. But I'm just going to go here to say Gaston built Grandfather Commander's a healing teaching lodge. And of course, the very first thing that grandfather did was go and buy an overhead machine so that he could project images on a board and formally engage in teaching. And Fran provided us with a drop screen so we were able to project our presentations on the wall. But at a later stage, we engaged in documenting and creating an archival library of the William Commanda books. And this is a project then that Fran and Gaston set up on spreadsheets and things like that. Fran managed the communications booth at our gatherings and uh, told everybody how to behave very well in both English and French. And she, of course, uh, is a super uh, uh, environmentalist, manages both her food, uh, disposables, and things like that in a remarkable way. And one day we're going to have Fran talk to us about that kind of thing. Of course, this leads me to thinking about our gatherings, and there are actually too many people for me to thank in relation to what made this other part of Grandfather William Commander's teaching so special. The sacred spiritual gatherings that were hosted on his land every August. And so many spiritual elders, so many, Peter de Conti maintained the sacred fire, but I don't really actually want to begin to name the many elders and the many folk who helped support the gatherings. One day we'll do a presentation on the gatherings, but maybe later I'll show you some photographs. But in the end, we'd finish off with a giveaway, and it was a way of thanking everybody for creating this marvelous experience. And so here, thanks to the gathering team who enabled so many people to learn in a different way from the teachings of Elder William Commanda. And now I'm going to the section with my post of very special memories. Here is a photograph of an ice sculpture done by our late friend Daniel Gagne. He was fascinated by Uncle Gabriel Commanda, who was a World War One veteran, and he was actually a person who's reputed for having carried Archie Bellany, the famous gray owl, off the battlefield when he shot himself in the foot. And through the lines of fire, uh, Uncle Gabriel carried this gray owl to safety. Uh, he was there really in the First World War as he was really finding his way into what was becoming the new Canada. and he had married a French woman from Saint-Sauveur, Quebec, had two little babies, but was dealing with the kind of racism that kept him on the outside of the family. And part of the way to affirm a relationship with the New World was, in fact, to be part of that effort of the First World War. And so today we remember Uncle Gabriel. He of course became a symbol for the voice of intercultural relationship. He became the person who wrote letters for everybody in the boom town, the mining boom town of Val d'Or, and that was because he could write in French and English and Algonquin. But also he was the person who actually showed other people the gold in that special area. And unfortunately, in the end, with the injustice of Canada, he died blind and penniless. But he lives on now in the people who respect him. And so every year, the Friendship Center in Val d'Or hosts a March 21st walk for racial harmony in the spirit of Uncle Gabriel Commanda. The kindergarten school over there is named after Gabriel Commanda, and it's wonderful because children of all backgrounds, all racial and cultural backgrounds, go there and learn under the umbrella of the indigenous uh, energies. Sauce Gabriel is named after him, and it's the water that um, uh, is provided to the people in the surrounding communities. And William Commanda went there at one point to bless the opening of a park in Uncle Gabriel's name. So a special person, and we're especially glad to remember him today. But we're also remembering William's sister, Judy, his older sister Judy, her daughter Daisy, his sister Mary, and we lost all of them in this past year. Well, Judy a few years before that. And very, very sad that William's grandnephew, Willow, John Gallinger, also left us a few days ago. John was such a special thinker, holder of the ancient knowledge of his grandfather Joe Jocko, who was also um, a great teacher of grandfather Commanda. Joe Jocko, being 10 years older, 20 years older than grandfather Commanda, when he took our young commander out into the bush and taught him about nature and taught him about hunting and trapping and managing in the winters and the summers. And so, yeah, our hearts go out to Willow's brother, Billy, there in the States, and to the um, heritage that he carries now with him into the new world, into the other world. So, yeah, so thank you for being a part of all the thinking that floats around in my mind. And so, yeah, so here we go. These are some of our contact details. And I shall now turn my PowerPoint off and go to the live stream and see who else wants to share with us. Close them off. And here we are. And I think it was Delphina who wanted to say something. So let me go and call her. one gets so anxious when is doing this online thing. One expects the technology to respond as immediately as anything, and yet in a normal event or gathering, we'll wait to go and move somebody from one place to another. We'd have a coffee break, etc. So, hi Delphina, it's Romola.
Hi, Romola.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Thanks for joining our Facebook Live event. And you wanted to share something, I see.
Well, I don't know if you can do it from your side, but I was thinking that sharing the reading of Turtle's Dream might be something to like lift people up at the end, like this, the piece, what can happen, right?
Can you just read a few lines for us?
I'm trying to remember my mind. Okay.
Or shall we just refer people to this?
Can you share that video
What
that I
video?
sent?
Oh, I didn't actually see it. How long is it?
I think it's like about 6 minutes.
Oh, it's a bit too long, but
Okay.
maybe you could actually post it on the chat line, then people will be able to get to it. That would be the best way. So you have written this book called Turtle's Dream, and this is what you are wanting to share.
And it was published in December, on December the 3rd. Let me see now, 2010.
Okay.
But I had the dream of Turtle having a dream on the four corners of the Southwest in 2009.
Okay.
And so the dream, and then I shared the dream, and then it came together, and it was made into the actual dream and the message of Turtle then was made into a book, right? So anyway, yeah, and I think, and then I shared, then I sent a copy. I think it was in the beginning of 2011, and grandfather got a copy. So I think it was like probably that because it was before August. So I think it probably, because the book was published December the 3rd, 2010, it probably was like the winter time because I shared it. And I know the message, he's like, I said it's a very simple story. And he got something like, he said, yes, it's simple is good. Like the children will need to hear this message, and adults too. Like doesn't matter what age, we all have that child inside us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing that, and thank you also on Facebook for sharing your new art and your new paintings and poetry. It's very, very beautiful to see the ongoing work that you're engaged in. But I would say now, post that link right on the video chat page, because then it'll be part of this video and then people can go to it and follow that thread.
Okay. I'm going to try to figure out this technology myself too. I know it's been a learning curve.
Yeah.
For all. And I love the earrings you're wearing, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Just look at them. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
There you are. Turtle is on the move. And these turtle earrings come from South Africa. My sister Zenny gave them to me many, many years ago, decades ago. And then I went to South Africa a few years ago, and somebody over there, actually quite a few South Africans noticed it. And I discovered they don't make this kind anymore. So, yeah, pretty special.
It's a rare turtle.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. It looks great. So, yeah, and the message, I guess, and I guess I'll put that on there. I guess what I realized after too is like with everything that's happening with COVID and the transformation and everything that's happening, that little message in that dream from Turtle back in 2009 was basically saying that each person and each animal has a unique gift inside of them that Creator gave each one of us. Each animal, each part of creation, everything. And if we hide those gifts, right, we don't share to the circle. But when we share the gifts, doesn't matter what age, right, and we share that unique gift which is necessary for the circle to be shared to bring us all together so we can have a new maybe a renaissance, a transformation, because we are in deep transformation now. So there's light at the end of this. The transformation to me is very much like Phoenix rising right now. We're right in it, you know.
Yeah, well, great. So thank you for sharing that, and it's so true. We've been talking about grandfather's kindergarten dropout book, and we say, uh, the talking circle and the feather gives us all the right and the responsibility to share, and that's how we move forward in influencing. So thanks for bringing that to us. Now I better go and see if I've got any students still waiting for me, though this is way late after class.
Okay.
And well, we'll catch up with you soon. Take good care. Best to your family. Best to all those animals inspiring your son and his marvelous photography. Take good care. Bye.
Thank you, Chibi Rich.
Bye. Okay, let me now say we're pretty well drawing to the close, and I am just going to see if any of our students are here. And wow, it's lovely to see so many folk here, but let me just go see. I know I was expecting Andrew. I guess, folk, if anybody would like to add to this conversation, please send me a message right away. Otherwise, I'm going to draw our event to a close. I suppose what I'd been thinking about with respect to some of our other students is that we've been engaged in looking at the Grandfather Commanda kindergarten dropout book, and have just concluded doing the deep reflection that is called upon us. And many of our students have shared photographs, music, and things like that in the course of this thing, which shows the living book is enriched so much by what folk themselves have to share. So I'm now going to see if I can play the 2020 commemorative video that Karen Bisson created for us, and we shall finish off on that note. Thank you all for joining us. Safe journeys into the future, and keep well, keep happy, and add to our circle conversation. And if you'd be interested in sharing in the future, please let me know, and I shall say goodbye to you with this. The idea for this video began when the Heartstar Festival came looking for musical contributions to inspire environmental stewardship. William Commanda was the greatest leader in this regard. His passion for all things related to the environment was evident in every breath he took during his journey here on Mother Earth. It's time. Navigate. Navigate.
call it Thumbadoo. I met William Commanda in 1997 when I was working in Indigenous Justice. I have coordinated his Circle for Nations work since then.
Requires your concentration as I navigate my translation. Tell me what I'm knowing. Help my way of going on the road to life. Show and rock the boat. Start rowing. Face what you're fearing when you're feeling in this feeling. I'm talking here and stop. Easy ride. Start steering. Try to be an original, not another dude. Be an individual, the leader of the group. Don't just look. Try to see. Don't just act. Try to be a thinker, a player, a writer, a sayer, a maker, a buyer, but not a liar.
Created man, created woman, an instruction was given to be caretakers of Mother Earth. Seven out of she treated belt.
We realized this video was also an opportunity to commemorate the 25th year since the launch of the Sambo 5 Walk of 1995-1996, and also the 20th anniversary of the Circle of All Nations International Millennium Peace Gathering, hosted at Nepean Point in Ottawa, May 22nd to May 25th in 2000.
nord-américain. Même je suis pas indien, parce que je viens pas d'Inde. Alors, l'Amérique, Nord-Amérique, oui, c'est moi, nord-américain. Miigwech.
Oh gosh, there's Sarah. I have to go and find a way to get you. Sorry, I did cancel that. Let's just stay. Okay. Why aren't I just getting you, Sarah? I'm just hoping to reach Sarah Lucero. I hope you're still there, and this is our friend. Oh, you're unreachable. Let me read out. And see. I think we're tiring Facebook out because the image is not, the text is not working as fast as it could. But neither is the video link. Let me just, yeah, give her a few minutes to present. Perhaps she will. No, she's still unreachable. So I guess we'll have to catch up with Sarah another time. Thank you, folk, for joining us, and a very special prayer for the family of William Commanda, for his Circle of All Nations communities, and please hold us all in your thoughts over the next few weeks into the future. Miigwech, Grandfather Miigwech Evelyn, for your support with all of this work, and hopefully one day soon we'll have you taking your place with the technology as well. Uh, I'm sure you'll be very well up to it as soon as you get to it. So yeah, take good care, everybody. Miigwech. Bye bye.